This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's funny. I talked about this in my hot takes video. I'll talk about it again. If I were talking to a regular NFL fan, and I know I'm not looking at the camera, I know comment section, but if I were talking to a regular NFL fan and I told them, you know, I think it's a real good chance the Browns shut down Joe Burrow, shut down T. Higgins, shut down Tyler Boyd, but I don't know. There's something about that week 2 matchup on Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh that concerns me. That person would look at me like I'm insane. Because emotionally, for a Browns fan, that statement makes a ton of sense. We beat the Bengals all the time. We've been able to match up with them well. It's them damn Steelers that's giving us trouble. So to us, that makes sense. 20 years of failure at that stadium in the regular season. But to the outside observer, we sound insane. We think we can shut down Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, some of the best in the game. But we out here sweating Kenny Pickett. It's funny how this works. This is what being a fan is. Sometimes fandom is being completely rational about something everybody else is being emotional about. And sometimes fandom is being emotional about something that everybody else feels like you should be rational about. It's a tough line to balance. Today, the Cleveland Browns play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. Historic matchup. It's a historic matchup for many reasons. Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been some of the bedrock franchises in the NFL in general, but also bedrock franchises for the Monday Night Football brand specifically. If you don't know, the Cleveland Browns played in the first Monday Night Football game. If you don't know, the Pittsburgh Steelers have played in some of the most memorable Monday Night Football games throughout history. These teams have matched up on Monday night before. It's a historic matchup. It's as historic, it's as NFL as anything the Cleveland Browns playing the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. It's not a big deal because of the rosters that are colliding, right? Kenny Pickett, Deshaun Watson, it's not a battle that like jumps off the page if Kenny Pickett were playing for like the Colts. But put that dude in a Steelers helmet and put Deshaun Watson in a Browns helmet, all of a sudden it's a big deal. See, sometimes with Cincinnati fans, I tell them this all the time and they get mad when I say it, but you deal with some jealousy from Bengal fans because they don't have the history the Cleveland Browns have. You know, they can claim on to Paul Brown all they want, but everything that got Paul Brown into the Hall of Fame and anything that they talk about Paul Brown for, he did in Cleveland. And that's why Paul Brown is so frustrated with what his family is so frustrated with how things ended in Cleveland, because they know that part of their legacy will always be in Cleveland, the most important part of their legacy. And that legacy makes Cleveland a historic NFL franchise. The Browns can suck and suck and suck, and the Bengals can be pretty good. But the NFL is always going to take the Browns more seriously as a brand because we're just a more recognizable, more historic brand. And the same thing can be said about the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's part of the reason why they have this war with the Ravens, because the Ravens, albeit more respectable brand than the Bengals are, at least when you look at how people observe them nationally, they struggle for that same thing, right? They want to be seen as a franchise on par with Pittsburgh, but the fact is that Pittsburgh, they have an era of history around it that a lot of other franchises don't. Same thing can be said for the Cleveland Browns. Same thing can be said for the Green Bay Packers, the Raiders. We know these franchises. You know, when you hear their team being called, you can hear like the NFL Films music being played because they're historic. The story of football cannot be told without these franchises. These are the franchises that invented the playbook. You know what I mean? These are the franchises that proposed the Super Bowl. These are the franchises that invented the face mask, training camp, things like that. Teams like the Bengals came along when the NFL was fully developed. Teams like the Browns were along when like a team can come from the AAFC, All-American Football Conference, and beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL, and the Browns were a champion of a different league, right? Like when there was that many football leagues around, professional football leagues around, to where the Browns could come from a different league and beat the NFL champion. I say all of this to say, it is right, if you are a fan, to weigh the history that's in front of you when you look at the Browns and Steelers matchup. Because what makes this matchup special, what makes this matchup a national TV game, isn't because the matchups on the field, the rosters are intriguing. I think this is a good matchup for the Cleveland Browns. I don't think it's very intriguing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's because the history of these two teams are intriguing. For all of the success the Cleveland Browns have had in franchise history and all the success that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had in franchise history, it's interesting that these two paths have never collided. Whenever the Browns were historically good, the Steelers stunk. Whenever the Steelers are historically good, the Cleveland Browns have stunk. And you find these two franchises here on Monday night at this crossroads. We don't know what Kenny Pickett's going to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if Kenny Pickett isn't good, what is the future for the Pittsburgh Steelers? It doesn't seem that bright. They seem to be hanging on to the last few rungs of their glory days, while the Cleveland Browns are coming on. And look, after some setback seasons, they seem ripe to finally seize their potential. And history has told us that the Browns are going this way. For whatever reason, the universe pushes the Steelers down this way. They never intersect. They're never going up at the same time. It's always one goes up, one goes down. And right now it looks like the Browns are going up and the Steelers are going down. So today is a huge game because Browns fans are aware of this. Browns fans are aware that no franchise took advantage of the Cleveland Browns down period more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did not only beat the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they took every chance to embarrass the Cleveland Browns in those 20 years. Try to erase the Cleveland Browns name, brand, and legacy with that embarrassment, and try to rewrite the Cleveland Browns' proud history as being owned by the Steelers. That's what they've done the last 20 years, and they've been pretty successful at it. Can't sit here and lie about it. To the point to where some of our own fans believe the lies that Pittsburgh Steelers fans have told you about the Cleveland Browns. But today is an opportunity to mark a change in that dynamic. On Monday Night Football with the A-Team on ABC, Channel 5 if you're watching in Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns get an opportunity to punch back. The Cleveland Browns get an opportunity to show that things are different. If the Browns win this game today on national TV in Pittsburgh, people are going to talk about the Browns differently, because this is usually when people nationally decide whether they're going to take the Browns seriously. I talked about this all the time. Playing this damn game in Pittsburgh always feels like Groundhog's Day for the Cleveland Browns. We feel good about what we saw. We feel good about the season. Let's go to Pittsburgh. We should win this game. And then for whatever reason, we don't win that game, and we feel terrible about the rest of the season. Some years, it turns out we're fine. We get to the playoffs. We beat them in the playoffs. That happened in 2020. But most of the time, it's usually an ominous precursor. And nationally, people know that. So people are going to be looking at this game, intrigued by what the Browns did, but holding back a little bit. Like, they do this against the Bengals all the time. But if they do something similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers or just beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, then all of a sudden, man, we got to take those Browns seriously. We got to talk about them a bit differently. It's funny because beating the Bengals on paper is much more impressive than beating the Steelers on the road. It just is. They're a better team. They have more success the last couple of years. That roster's better. But for whatever reason, this is the win that's going to make people take you seriously. Maybe because it's on national TV. Maybe it's because of the story of these two franchises. But that's the truth. People were upset. We didn't get the love that we should have after beating the Bengals. That's probably why. They're waiting for this one. So if the Cleveland Browns win this game in Pittsburgh, it's going to feel like a new day. It's going to feel like a new day in Cleveland. It's going to feel like a new day nationally. Don't let them beat them bad, right? It's going to feel like a new day. But if they don't, it's going to feel like the same 45-degree, somewhat rainy day it's always been in Cleveland. Today we find out what kind of Cleveland team do we have, or today we at least get, today is Groundhog's Day for the Cleveland Browns. Will the Browns see their own shadow or will they not? For a long time, we know what it's been. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. How are you feeling? Y'all have a great day. I'll see y'all at game time for my live stream.